Colonel Marcus Hayes leaned back in his briefing chair, arms crossed, watching the mission replay with barely concealed disdain. Captain Torres, your A-10 is assigned strictly to overwatch and reconnaissance. Close air support is handled by the fast movers. Stay at altitude, stay out of the way. The words hung in the briefing room like a death sentence. 6 hours later, SEAL Team 7 was pinned down in a kill box with no way out, their extraction birds smoking in the valley below, when Captain Elena Torres dropped her Thunderbolt II through the mountain peaks at 200 feet, her 30mm cannon already spinning. Want to know what happened when they told her to stay out of the way? Hit subscribe to see how one underestimated A-10 pilot changed everything with physics, precision, and a grandfather's training that was never in any official file. Captain Elena Torres adjusted her flight helmet one final time before stepping into the pre-dawn briefing at Bagram Air Base. At 28, she cut an unremarkable figure among the predominantly male aircrew average height, practical brown hair pulled back in regulation style, wearing standard-issue flight suit that concealed her lean athletic build. Only her eyes gave any hint of something extraordinary. Pale green, almost glacier, blue, that seemed to calculate distances and angles with mathematical precision. Torres, Colonel Hayes barely glanced up from his tactical display. You're flying Overwatch today. High-altitude reconnaissance for SEAL Team 7's extraction operation in the Kunar province. Stay at 15,000 feet, maintain radio contact, and observe only. Understood, sir. Elena's voice carried no trace of emotion, though she'd flown 67 combat missions in the A-10 Thunderbolt II, more than half the pilots in the squadron combined. Major Rick Santana, lead pilot for the F-16 squadron, chuckled from across the briefing table. Don't worry, Torres. We'll handle any actual shooting that needs doing. The Warthog's just there to take notes today. Elena nodded professionally. Copy that, Major. What none of them knew what her personnel file would never reveal, due to classification levels they'd never see, was that Elena Torres had grown up on her grandfather's ranch in Montana, where retired Marine sniper Carlos Torres had taught his granddaughter to calculate wind drift at 200 yards before she could legally drive. Her father, Air Force Colonel Roberto Torres, had been killed in Afghanistan when she was 16, but not before teaching her that precision and patience were the only things that mattered when lives hung in the balance. The mission briefing continued with standard tactical parameters. SEAL Team 7, call sign Blackwater, had been operating behind enemy lines for 72 hours. Their extraction window opened at 800 hours in a narrow valley surrounded by peaks reaching 80 feet. Enemy forces were estimated at company strength, with possible anti-aircraft capabilities. Weather's marginal, the intelligence officer announced. Cloud ceiling at 60 feet, visibility 3 miles in morning fog. Winds variable at 15, 20 knots with gusts to 30. Elena made mental notes that had nothing to do with her assigned Overwatch mission. The valley's elevation, the wind patterns, the tactical geometry of the terrain, all of it processed through calculations that had been drilled into her since childhood. At 630 hours, Elena performed her pre-flight inspection of tail number 81964, a battle-scarred A-10 Thunderbolt II, known to the crew as Avalanche. The twin-engine aircraft bore the distinctive nose art of a mountain lion, painted by Elena herself during her first deployment. Most pilots saw the A-10 as ugly, utilitarian, slow. Elena saw surgical precision wrapped in titanium armor, built around the most devastating close-support weapon in the Air Force inventory, the A-8, Avenger 30mm cannon. Torres, Sergeant Mike Chen, her crew chief, approached with a clipboard. She's ready to fly. Full combat load. 170. 4 rounds of 30mm. Full fuel. and the targeting pod you specifically requested. The lightning pod? Elena asked, though she already knew the answer. Yes, ma'am. Advanced targeting, laser designation, infrared imaging. Though I'm not sure why you need it for a reconnaissance mission. Elena's pale eyes scanned the aircraft's weapon systems one final time. Just being prepared, Sergeant. By 745 hours, Elena was orbiting at 15,000 feet above the extraction zone, maintaining radio contact with all units. Below, morning fog clung to the valley floor like gray cotton, limiting visibility to the mountaintops. Her aircraft systems painted a detailed picture through thermal imaging and radar. Overwatch. This is Blackwater Actual. Came the voice of Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison, SEAL Team Leader. We're in position. LZ is secured, waiting for extraction bird. Copy, Blackwater. Overwatch has you visual through thermals. LZ appears clear. The extraction helicopter, call sign Dustoff 3, was a CH-47 Chinook inbound from the south. Elena watched its thermal signature approach through her targeting systems, noting the pilot's professional approach through the challenging mountain terrain. At exactly 802 hours, everything went wrong. Contact! 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 Morrison's voice exploded over the radio. We're taking heavy fire from the ridgeline. Approximately 200 enemy personnel with crew, served weapons. Dustoff 3, wave off, wave off. Elena watched through her lightning pod as muzzle flashes erupted from concealed positions along the eastern ridge. The enemy had waited for the extraction bird to commit to its approach before springing their trap. Dustoff 3 is hit. The helicopter pilot's voice crackled with static and strain. We're going down, we're going down. The Chinook disappeared behind a rocky outcrop, followed by a pillar of black smoke. Blackwater. This is Overwatch. Elena transmitted, her voice steady, despite what she was witnessing. I count multiple hostile positions. Grid 42, SMB 40, 1,000, 750-60, 3,982. Elevation approximately 200 feet. Enemy has tactical advantage with elevated firing positions. We're pinned down, Morrison replied. Automatic weapons fire, nearly drowning out his transmission. Request immediate, close air support. Danger close to our position. Blackwater, this is Falcon Lead. Major Santana's voice cut in from the F-16 flight. We're inbound ETA 12 minutes. 12 minutes. Elena ran the tactical calculations in her head. With the amount of firepower the enemy was directing into the valley, SEAL Team 7 wouldn't survive 12 minutes. Colonel Hayes, this is Overwatch. Elena transmitted to the command post. Request permission to provide immediate close air support to Blackwater. Negative, Overwatch. Maintain altitude and position. Fast movers will handle CAS. Elena watched her thermal display as the enemy fire intensified. The SEAL team's return fire was becoming sporadic, a clear indication they were running low on ammunition and taking casualties. Sir, with respect, the tactical situation requires immediate intervention. I can be on target in 90 seconds. Absolutely not, Captain. You're flying a slow-moving ground attack aircraft in a high-threat environment with possible SAMs. Maintain your assigned altitude. Through her targeting pod, Elena could see the thermal signatures of individual enemy fighters moving to flanking positions. The mathematics were simple and brutal. Without immediate suppression of the ridge positions, SEAL Team 7 would be overrun within minutes. Blackwater, this is Overwatch. Elena transmitted privately. What's your ammunition status? We're down to our last magazines. Morrison replied, his breathing labored. Torres, if you've got anything up there, now would be a good time. Elena's hands moved across her aircraft controls with practiced precision. She disabled her transponder, a move that would make her invisible to friendly radar systems, and pushed the A-10's nose toward the valley floor. Colonel Hayes, Overwatch, is experiencing equipment malfunctions, she transmitted. Lost you on radio. Switching to backup frequencies. She turned off her primary radio and switched to the emergency tactical channel, knowing it would take command several minutes to locate her on the backup frequency. The A-10 descended through the cloud layer like a predatory bird, its twin turbofan engines whistling softly in the thin mountain air. Elena's altimeter unwound rapidly. 10, 0 feet, 8, 0, 6, 0. The valley floor rushed up to meet her as she leveled off at 200 feet above ground level, threading the aircraft between mountain peaks with clearance measured in yards rather than hundreds of feet. Physics and applied mathematics, Elena whispered to herself, her grandfather's favorite phrase, when teaching her to account for every variable in a long-range shot. Wind speed at valley level, 18 knots from the northwest. Air density at 6, 0 feet elevation, approximately 81% of sea level. Target elevation, 1, 200 feet above aircraft altitude. Range to target, 2, 100 meters and closing. Elena's targeting pod locked onto the first enemy position, a crew-served machine gun that had been pouring fire into the SEAL team's position. Her hands moved with surgical precision across the weapon controls, selecting the A-10, a cannon, and adjusting for the extreme low-altitude attack profile. Blackwater, this is Overwatch. Danger, close fire mission inbound from the south. Mark your position with smoke and get down. Roger, Overwatch. Smoke is out. We are down. Elena pulled the A-10 into a shallow climb, aligning the aircraft's nose with the enemy position. At 800 meters. She squeezed the trigger. The A-8, A Avenger cannon erupted with its distinctive grinding roar, a sound that had earned the A-10 the nickname Warthog. Depleted uranium rounds, each the size of a milk bottle, streaked toward the ridgeline at 500 feet per second. Elena fired in controlled 2-second bursts, walking the 30mm fire across the enemy positions with mechanical precision. The first burst obliterated the machine gun position in a shower of rock and smoke. Elena immediately adjusted her aim point and fired again, targeting a second enemy position 100 meters to the north. The high-explosive incendiary rounds detonated against the rocky outcrop, sending enemy fighters scurrying for new cover. "Unfucking believable," came a voice over the tactical frequency, one of the SEALs, watching the impossible low-altitude gun run. "She's flying below the ridgeline." Elena banked hard left, using a narrow gorge to mask her approach for the second pass. Her aircraft was now flying through terrain that should have been impossible for a fixed-wing aircraft, skimming ridgelines, threading between peaks. Using the mountain geography like a fighter pilot would use clouds for concealment. On the second pass, she identified 3 more enemy positions through her targeting pod. Range: 950 meters. Elevation difference: 100 feet. Wind: now gusting to 25 knots due to the thermal effects of the valley. Elena made microscopic adjustments to her flight path, accounting for the ballistic trajectory of her 30mm rounds through the thin mountain air. She fired 3 separate bursts in rapid succession, each precisely aimed at a different target. The enemy returned fire, which had been overwhelming moments before, suddenly went quiet. Blackwater, Overwatch. I count no movement in the target area. Can you confirm enemy status? Overwatch, this is Blackwater Actual. Morrison's voice carried a note of amazement. We confirm all hostile fire has ceased. I count at least 12 confirmed enemy Kia, multiple weapons destroyed. How the hell did you do that? Elena was already climbing back to altitude, knowing that command would be frantically trying to re-establish contact. Just doing my job, Blackwater. Recommend you move to alternate extraction point, Delta. I'll provide overwatch. Roger that, Overwatch. And Torres. Thank you. You just saved 7 lives. By the time Elena had climbed back to 15,000 feet and reactivated her transponder, the rescue Chinook was inbound to the alternate extraction site. SEAL Team 7 was safely extracted without further incident. The F-16s arrived to find nothing but smoke and empty enemy positions. Overwatch. This is Colonel Hayes, came the inevitable radio call. Report your status and explain your radio malfunction. Colonel. Equipment failure has been resolved. I maintained overwatch of friendly forces throughout the extraction operation. There was a long pause before Hayes responded. Captain Torres, report to my office immediately upon landing. Elena's post-flight debriefing lasted 3 hours. Colonel Hayes, Major Santana, and 2 intelligence officers sat across from her in the squadron conference room, reviewing gun camera footage and radio transcripts. Captain Torres, Hayes began, his earlier dismissive tone notably absent. Your aircraft recorded 347 rounds of 30mm ammunition expended during a period when you reported radio equipment failure. Yes, sir. I observed immediate threats to friendly forces and responded according to rules of engagement. Major Santana leaned forward, studying the targeting pod footage. Torres, this gun camera shows your aircraft at altitudes below 300 feet, flying between mountain peaks in 0 visibility conditions. The tactical manual states that A-10 operations in mountainous terrain should maintain a minimum altitude of 500 feet AGL. Elena's pale eyes met him steadily. Sir, the tactical situation required adaptation of standard procedures to preserve friendly lives. The mathematics don't work, Colonel Hayes stated flatly. At the ranges and angles shown in this footage, accounting for wind, elevation, and aircraft movement, the probability of achieving these precision strikes approaches 0. It's mathematically impossible. Elena remained silent for several moments before responding. With respect, sir, physics and applied mathematics. The A-10, a cannon fires depleted uranium rounds at 500 feet per second, at a range of 800 to 100 meters, accounting for air density at altitude, wind drift, and ballistic drop. Precision strikes are achievable with proper training and experience. The intelligence officer consulted his tablet. Captain, your personnel file indicates you completed standard A-10 training at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base. There's no record of specialized mountain warfare training or extreme low-altitude tactical instruction. Elena's expression remained professionally neutral. I received additional instruction from family members with relevant military experience. What she didn't mention, what her classified background investigation would never reveal, was that her grandfather had taught her to calculate ballistic trajectories before she learned algebra, that her first shooting lessons involved targets at ranges most military snipers would consider extreme, that growing up on a Montana ranch with a retired Marine sniper for a grandfather meant learning to account for wind, humidity, air density, and the Coriolis effect as naturally as breathing. The debriefing concluded with Elena receiving an official letter of reprimand for deviating from assigned mission parameters. Unofficially, her gun camera footage became classified training material, studied by A-10 pilots throughout the theater. 2 weeks later, Elena was approached by Lieutenant Commander Morrison during chow at the base dining facility. Captain Torres, Jake Morrison, SEAL Team 7. I wanted to thank you personally for what you did out there. Elena looked up from her meal. Just doing my job, Commander. Glad your team made it home safely. Morrison sat down across from her. Ma'am, with respect, what you did wasn't just doing your job. I've called in close air support from A-10s, F-16s, F-18s, you name it. I've never seen anything like what you pulled off in that valley. Flying below the ridgeline, precision fires in zero visibility, danger close to friendly forces that was something else entirely. Elena's response was characteristic. Physics, applied mathematics, and practice. Commander. Morrison studied her for a moment. Captain, I don't know what your background is, and I probably don't have the clearance to know. But I've got 6 team members who are alive today because you were willing to ignore orders and do what was necessary. If you ever decide the Air Force isn't challenging enough, the teams would be honored to have you. 3 months later, Elena's squadron received a new training directive mandating extreme low-altitude mountain flying exercises for all A-10 pilots. The official author was listed as Joint Special Operations Command, but pilots noted the tactical scenarios bore remarkable similarity to the classified gun camera footage from the Kunar Province incident. Elena continued flying combat missions with the same quiet professionalism she'd always displayed. Her fellow pilots' attitudes had shifted noticeably. The casual dismissals and condescending comments about the slow A-10 had been replaced by respectful nods and requests for tactical advice. During a routine maintenance inspection, 6 months after the incident, Sergeant Chen approached Elena as she reviewed her aircraft's maintenance logs. Captain, I've been working on A-10s for 12 years. I've seen a lot of pilots come and go. But what you did that day in the mountains, that footage they show in advanced tactical training now, I've never seen flying like that. Elena signed off on the maintenance report without looking up. Just using the aircraft as designed, Sergeant. The A-10 is more capable than most people realize. Yes, ma'am, but it takes a pretty exceptional pilot to realize that capability. As Elena walked toward the flight line for her evening mission, she reflected on her grandfather's words. Mija, people will always underestimate what you can do. Let your actions speak louder than their assumptions. The A-10 Thunderbolt II tail number 81964 Avalanche sat waiting on the tarmac, its mountain lion nose art gleaming in the Afghan sunset. Elena Torres had proven that precision, preparation, and quiet professionalism could overcome any tactical challenge. More importantly, she'd proven that assumptions about capability, whether regarding aircraft or pilots, could be deadly wrong. Colonel Hayes never again assigned A-10s to simple overwatch missions. Major Santana requested cross-training in close air support procedures. And somewhere in a classified training facility, new pilots learned extreme low-altitude tactics from gun camera footage that officially never existed. Elena Torres continued serving with distinction, her true capabilities known only to those who had witnessed the impossible, an A-10 Thunderbolt II, threading mountain peaks at 200 feet, delivering precision fires that saved 7 lives and redefined what was tactically possible. The SEAL team's last words had been, "We're done." Elena Torres proved they were just getting started. Subscribe if you believe that quiet competence and precise action speak louder than assumptions and limitations.